right, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Recharging the Human Battery Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Stefanos Sinacropi, board-certified orthopedic surgeon, talking everything wellness, life, health, celebrities, you name it. This is AM 950 Radio, and we are going to have a good time today talking about what I love to talk about all the time, and you guys know it, and that is how to get your health and wellness in the right direction, become CEOs of your own healthcare. So, you know, as somebody that is so wanting to get people kind of shaken out of their, I don't want to call it a stupor or their kind of silos. I'm always looking at ways to convince you that there is so much available to keep you feeling better, looking better, living longer. And, you know, there's just different ways to do it. You know, some people, when I talk to them directly, I have to be really positive. We think about, like, what are their goals? What are their dreams? And that is enough to kind of inspire them to go in a different direction. Other people are, you know, really not doing well, and they're not in a great place. And sometimes the best tact is to talk to them about what they're going to feel and look like 10 years from now if they continue down this difficult, path of having a poor lifestyle, continuing just not to feel their best, and thinking about all the health issues and other things that can come up, not to mention what they're going to look like. And I say this all the time. You know, I'm born in 1973. You know, I made the decision a long time ago, personally, that I was going to take my health extremely seriously. You'd think that that's a given as a physician. Not true. Physicians are as sick as everybody else. And so when I see people that have the same birth date as me, 1973, oftentimes, it could go either way. But most of the time, it's like, wow, this person has really aged a lot, you know, and why? And again, it's lifestyle choices. It's what we choose to do on a daily basis. So, you know, I'm here to try to help you guys to make the correct choices. I'm not saying that anyone has to be perfect, but we've got to do something. So here's not a new thing, but something, you know, that I do, but I haven't really talked about it on a show or in one of my podcasts, but that's this. You ever notice that those people, these A-list celebrities and these famous people just kind of happen to look better than most other people, age slower, are just in a different place, right? You know them, the Tom Cruises of the world, right? I mean, they look the same in Mission Impossible, 10 or whatever we're up to, that they did in Mission Impossible 1, which was in 1996. So it's pretty crazy. So the thing about it is that they don't have some quote unquote secret. They use all these biohacking tools, biohacking being biology, hacking the biology, utilizing all kinds of stuff, things we've talked about on the show ad nauseum, different diet plans, red light therapy, things like that. So what are their secrets? So, I thought today on our show, let's talk about all of these different A-list celebrities. I have 11 on my mind that I wanted to talk about, and let's talk about what their strategies are. Sort of, I'll guide you through it as a physician. Again, not medical advice, but I do a lot of this stuff myself, and I'm going to end it with my strategy. What do I do, right, in my life to try to kind of slow down the aging process and live my best life? So on the other side of the break, we are going to get into some of these celebs. Some of it is just kind of standard. Some of it is pretty out there, but let's talk about it. We'll see you on the other side of the break. This is Recharging the Human Battery Radio. I'm Dr. Sinacropi, and we are on AM 950, and we'll see you on the other side. All right, welcome back. On the other side, Today we are talking about why do these A-list celebrities look so good? I mean, it's just ridiculous. Like sometimes you see some of these people, you see the Tom Cruises, the Halle Berrys, the Jennifer Lopez. How is it even possible that they're aging at such a slow pace? Well, the bottom line is they take their health very, very seriously. Yes, they have unlimited amounts of money. They reinvest it back into their health, but they have the same amount of time as you do, right? We all have 24 hours in a day, and reinvesting in your health, you have to invest your time. And so a lot of people don't do it for money. A lot of people don't do it for time. And a lot of people don't do it because they don't understand how powerful these hacks are. The truth is, the vast majority of these biohacks are available to absolutely a very large segment of the population. It's something that I really love doing. I'll tell you what I do, like I said at the end. But we have, these clinics all over the Twin Cities. We do all these biohacking things. When I fell in love with biohacking, I decided that I wanted to bring it out at a much larger scale. So myself and my partners decided to roll out these clinics to really make it available to the masses and really educate. And you know what? It's been tough because a lot of people don't understand what these biohacking techniques can do and how effective they are. So sometimes they hear about these things, they think they're gimmicky, they're not happy. So one of the tacks is, hey, look at these A-list celebrities. Look at what they look like. I am telling you, this is the stuff they do. I wasn't even aware. I went to Columbia University for med school, never heard anything about biohacking, literally didn't know anything about it. I mean, I've always been into diet and exercise, like I always talk to you about, and that's step one, but there's so many things that we could do, past that. Once I found this out, like, 2.5, 3 years ago, started doing it myself, no brainer. Absolutely no brainer. So the question is, what are these other, celebrities doing? I mean, you might have heard, here and there what these people are doing, and people think, oh my God, I can't do that. I can't spend $1 million a year or $2 million a year. Well, guess what? It doesn't. I mean, it's you can even spend a couple $100 a month and make huge impacts in your life. So, all right. Let's get right down to it. Let's talk about some of these, men and women that are absolutely defying aging. Again, they're not doing anything, well, a couple are, but most of them stuff that's accessible to you. So let's talk about one of my all-time favorites. I think most people like him. I mean, taking, some of his other stuff out of the way, some of the more goofy stuff. Tom Cruise has got to be, he's up there with one of the all-time greats. Big favorite of mine, that the whole Mission Impossible series, Live, Die, Repeat, all these things, incredible. But the one thing that I always notice about him, and I always turn to my wife and say, like, does this guy age? I mean, it's literally one of the most ridiculous things that I've ever seen. Do me a favor, go to some of his early movies. Okay, and this is the difference between doing biohacking and not. Go to some of Tom Cruise's early movies, figure out the other actors and actresses that were around his same age when they were doing the movies. Go look at a picture of them today, and you'll see the difference. This is the difference between taking biohacking seriously and not taking biohacking seriously. So what does Tom Cruise do? Well, number one, he does this crazy high intensity interval training workout. And why does he do that? Because he has to do these high intensity stunt training. So he's constantly training his body. There's a lot of ways to do it. You'll hear about a lot of the other celebrities and other types of A-listers that are doing this. He's on a very low carb diet, which we all know. Taking the sugars out. Sugars are very serious when it comes to creating inflammation in our bodies. There's one of my favorite guys, Dr. Lustig. He's a big health and wellness guru, very well-known guy, professor in the West Coast. And, he talks about if we just reduced our sugar intake in the United States, we would decrease our expenditure on health by about $1 trillion, right? That'd make a huge impact because we spend 4.4 trillion. That's like a quarter of that. But the truth is that these diets that are packed with sugars and other preservatives and other artificial things are horrible they're terrible for our skin. They're terrible for every organ system. They're terrible for anti-aging. They shorten our telomeres, which determine, kind of our longevity. So that's a big problem. He is a big, big proponent of hyperbaric oxygen therapy, the HBOT. So we talked about this before on the show. Pushing oxygen into your system and hyperoxygenating you is amazing for cellular health. So there's different ways to do it. So the hyperbaric chambers, which are very popular. I'm a huge proponent of it. We use it for infectious diseases. We use it for burns in medicine. We use it for other stuff, but for longevity, for anti-aging, it is amazing. So in our clinics, we make it a little bit easier. We are bringing in hyperbaric oxygen therapy specifically for brain health, but we also do something called exercise while under oxygen, where you're basically sucking in pure oxygen while you work out. It's basically pulling in oxygen, but you're getting hyperoxygenated. Oxygen is so critical in speeding healing and really decreasing inflammation. Great for the brain. We could go on for a while, but you're going to see he's not the only one that is doing oxygen treatments. I'll tell you, what a testament to somebody that has been able to keep himself healthy. And it was a little bit sad on this 2 weekends ago. We went and we saw this last Mission Impossible. And they really are thinking that this is the end of the series, which is tragic. But I'm sure he's going to, start some other new series or, come back as Jason Bourne or something, even though he's in his 60s. Wow. I mean, it's just really amazing. This is a 62-year-old man who looks like he's 40 years old. So we might want to think about, some of the things he's doing. All right. Let's go to, one of my wife's favorites, J-Lo. I mean, who doesn't love J-Lo? I mean, she's Puerto Rican. My wife's Puerto Rican. We grew up in, in the Northeast. She is just a testament. Again, she's 55 years old. I mean, if you didn't know that, you would never guess that, right? Who would guess that J-Lo is 55 years old? So what does she do? So J-Lo does a lot of high-intensity interval training. So what's the difference? Let's talk about high-intensity interval training. That is where you basically go very hard, and then you stop. It's interval training. It's incredible for developing muscle, for developing, improving recovery, decreasing inflammation. It is one of the absolute go-to favorites. It's something that I definitely do. For myself, again, we'll talk about that later. I want to tell you about my personal biohacking protocol, and what I do. But high intensity interval training, you're going to see this across the board. It is really a staple. Talk to your trainers, talk to your doctors, but certainly something that people should consider incorporating. Plant-based diet. So we've talked a ton about different diets. You guys know how I feel. I think that there are a lot of ways to skin the cat. We talked about Tom Cruise's low carb diet, but these whole food plant-based diets. I've had Joel Fuhrman on my podcast before, the Eat to Live guy. I've had Dr. Katz, a famous judge for World News, as far as, which diets work best. But bottom line is plant-based diets have very clearly shown longevity benefits, decreasing inflammation. It's not it's not a perfect diet for everybody, but generally whole food diets, mostly plants, nuts, and seeds, is a good way to stay healthy and definitely to slow down the aging process. Infrared saunas have a ton of benefits. When you're in the sauna, it affects something called heat shock proteins, but you're also getting the infrared light. Infrared light is absorbed in our mitochondria, or the powerhouses of our cell. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. But infrared saunas are, an incredible, way to really decrease inflammation and potentially improve longevity. So how does she do these intervals? Well, she just, this high intensity interval training, she'll mix it into her, her dance. She does a lot of dance, and that really, really helps her. She's also known to do just red light therapy for skin. Now, infrared is amazing for deeper penetration and for cellular health, but usually the red light therapy is also absorbed in our mitochondria. It doesn't penetrate as deep, but it's incredible for skin. So you'll see these red light skin masks and other things. Again, that doesn't have as much medicinal properties for the overall, health and wellness, but it's incredible, for skin. As far as overall, she is really, really boosting energy levels and decreasing inflammation for high intensity training. It increases growth hormone. Again, we'll hit that a little bit later. All right, let's go to Chris Hemsworth, 41 years old. Again, a guy that looks like he's probably in his late 20s. Somebody that I would anticipate that when he's 62, when he's Tom Cruise's age, he's going to be one of these guys that is really defying aging. But it's not it's not a mystery. It's not a secret how these guys are doing it. So I just want to roll this out just to get you guys thinking, what biohacks do you want to incorporate into your life? So he is a big intermittent faster. Okay, intermittent fasting is when, and there's different ways to do intermittent fasting. There's daily intermittent fasting, which I'm the biggest proponent of, and something that I personally practice, where you basically limit your eating windows to 8 hours, 6 hours, 4 hours perhaps. And basically what that allows us to do is in the fasted period, when you're not fed, you're not pushing basically glucose and things like that into your cells. You're not creating the garbage in the cell itself. You're able to clear out the cell. Cells that are not healthy are able to turn over. We know intermittent fasting or long-term fasting is beneficial in things like, preventing cancers. It's beneficial when people have cognitive declines. It's great for overall, brain health. It's great to stay better fit as far as keeping body fat down and things like that. So intermittent fasting is a real big one. He does something called functional fitness, again, in that same line. We're not going to go into all these fitness routines, but one thing is clear. They are all into some type of fitness routine that, that might help them. Cold plunges. Right? Cold plunges, you hear about it on the Joe Rogan show. You hear about it, and we could say cryotherapy, which is a little bit different than a cold plunge, but incredibly anti-inflammatory. Now, it does increase what's called your catecholamines. It increases, the fight or flight hormone very, very briefly, but then you get the opposite effect. Then you go into a more parasympathetic state, a more smoother state. But over time, that has tremendous anti-inflammatory properties, and it really, really can work. So again, this combination, so just think about it, just a simple combination for him of intermittent fasting, doing fitness routines that he can absolutely follow on a routine basis, and then doing things like cold plunges and infrared light. Just that can keep you healthier and fit, and there's so much more, and combinations of them can be even more powerful. All right, another one of my favorites, and how can we not have her in here? Holly Berry. She takes a completely different approach to diet, and so one of her big ones is the ketogenic diet. Now, ketogenic diet is basically when you have no sugar. I'm going to simplify this for the sake of this show. I mean, we can do an entire show on the different diets and the controversies and whatnot. So ketogenic diet is one that, has had a little bit of controversy. Those people that are more plant-based diet, that are more vegans or nutritarians, like Dr. Furman ascribes to, they don't like the ketogenic diet. It may not be as good for heart health and other things, but again, it all is depending on the person. There are other people that swear by ketogenic diets. In fact, on a social media post, I compared basically carnivore, ketogenic diets to vegan diets and the the pluses and minuses of it. And it was like one of the most vehement disagreements. I mean, people were just left and right bashing each other because people take these factions. As a physician, again, this isn't medical advice, but when I do give advice, I try to tailor diets to, number one, what are their overall health risks? And I think that if somebody has any kind of cardiac risks, I do go more towards the plant-based diets because there's studies that would support that. But ketogenic diet is really good for rapid weight loss, and in a lot of otherwise healthy patients, it can be a great lifestyle. It can keep people, they can keep their weight down. It can keep them feeling better. It can prevent them from brain fog. And ketogenic diets clearly in cognitive decline, like in Alzheimer's disease, can make a significant impact. That has been demonstrated. There was just a pretty big study that came out, pretty fascinating stuff. So she does ketogenic diet, yoga. She does yoga. I mean, yoga's fascinating, right? It's great for your flexibility. It's great for your brain. It is great to decrease inflammation. It's incredible. Meditation is huge. And again, some of these other, people that I mentioned, they probably meditate as well. They're just maybe not as public about some of these things. But when you go into meditative, deep states, your brain chemistry changes. You're releasing hormones. We call them the hormones of love, as opposed to the hormones of stress. And I mean, they are released in buckets. When you study brains of people that do deep meditation, you can see changes in parts of the brain that are associated with happiness, that are associated with recovery, these types of things. Meditation is an incredible thing to have in your routine. So again, let's think about her. She does a keto diet, she does yoga, she does meditation. Okay. That again, another powerful combination of keeping herself healthy and fit. And listen, it is you just have to look at her. Look at the way she looks. I mean, in the recent movies, again, she looks like she did 15 years ago, right? I compare that to people that I know. They don't look like what they look like 15 years ago. Why? They're not in this biohacking realm. It's available to you. I don't think I've said anything yet that isn't widely available, to the masses, to whoever wants it, and not particularly expensive. All right. Let's talk about let's talk about some other cool stuff that people are doing. Lady Gaga. Okay, when you think Lady Gaga, you're probably thinking crazy elaborate suits, crazy shows, a little bit out there, a little bit eccentric. But the truth is, she is a big, biohacker. I actually didn't know that. I just kind of looked it up. I was like, oh, I didn't know she was a biohacker. It's very interesting. So she uses a combination of something called adaptogens, advantage, stress. She uses different types of, natural, like mushroom based supplements that can help to manage that. I'm not going to get into all that because, again, that's an entire other show. And supplements, you have to be really careful with. I would really caution you when you get these supplements, even if you're getting them from GMC. I've talked about this before. Be very, very careful. Look at the brand. Look at what it does. Make sure it doesn't interfere with any other medications you're taking. Again, not medical advice, but it's very important. She does cryotherapy, which significantly reduces inflammation, as we mentioned before, boosts growth hormone, has all kinds of other anti-aging benefits. She does other things which are outside anything I would recommend, where she has experimented with things like psychedelics. That is something that I understand that in the psychiatry world and the neurology world, there's a lot of that stuff going on in the medical community. That is not my area of expertise. I know people are doing this. But something that I certainly do not promote or necessarily condone. But it is interesting to see that all of these people are really looking for the fountain of youth, and they may have just basically found it with these different combinations. She's also a very big proponent of something that I talk about a lot, which is very intense red light therapy. Now, she uses the Theralight 360, which we do have That's one of the devices that we have in our clinic. So the TheraLight 360 can deliver a powerful amount of infrared light to the body. Very different. People always ask me, well, why can't I just get a panel from Amazon, and not have to go into these clinics and do so? Because the truth is, you're getting a much higher intensity of light in these chambers, and it's a lot more medicinal, and we use it for so many different conditions in our clinics. Now, she happens to suffer from a very difficult one, which is fibromyalgia. She talks about it openly, but she did post this in 2024 where she uses these light beds. You guys know me. I'm always in the light bed. I mean, I live in the light bed. Why? Because it has made such an impact on my life personally. But we'll talk about my routine, at the end. So this combination of supplements and cryotherapy and light therapy, again, great combination that is really, really working. All right, let's go to a young one, Justin Bieber. He's 31 years old. The Biebs, he's always in trouble. Something's always going on. But you know what? He's a very popular guy. And so for you younger folks that think that just because you're, in your 20s or early 30s, you don't have to do anything, guess what? It's all going to add up over time. So what does he do? He does something called NAD plus IV drips. I'm a huge proponent of it. Without getting into details, NAD is mitochondrial food. It's involved in something called the respiratory chain. But listen, it's involved in producing energy. All of our mitochondria produce energy. NAD is a food for mitochondria. Why would we not want to consider doing NAD plus? Again, not medical advice, but generally extremely safe, something that we absolutely do in our integrative health clinic for so many different types of conditions. But it is fantastic. And I can tell you NAD plus is a game changer if you're over 40 years old, because our NAD plus naturally in our body goes down significantly, but it's also effective, when we're younger. He is a big infrared light therapy person. Again, infrared light, can't say enough about it. And then he does a lot of plant-based eating and smoothies and things like that. Again, bottom line is 31 years old. He's on the right track. Now, some of his other habits, it might be counteracting that. So, be very, very, very careful in emulating, some of these stars, and emulate their good habits, and maybe look at what they are doing that's probably not great for them. And maybe don't do that. But anyway, so Brian Johnson, you guys might have heard of him. There's specials on this guy. This guy wants to live forever. This guy, the Pope has commented on Brian Johnson, literally. And so we've got to at least think about what he is doing. So he is the over the top biohacker. Now, the one thing I'll say about Brian Johnson before I tell you all the stuff he does is I love biohacking. It's a huge part of my own personal life. I do spend, a significant amount of time a day focusing on these things and longevity and anti-aging. And it's the same stuff that I preach, to patients that I see and I'm actually treating. However, if you wake up in the morning and you wake up, let's say at 6 a.m. and from 6 a.m. to the time you go to bed, all you're doing is biohacking and obsessing about every single molecule that you're putting in your body and are taking 57 supplements and doing this stuff all day. Eventually, I don't know if you're getting the kind of enjoyment that we're looking from out of life. So I don't think that that's the best way to live. Certainly, I don't. My thing is easily, wrapped up into my own personal, routine. And I think if you do something that's consistent and you can do it most days, you're going to see huge impact. So what does Brian Johnson do? So he's 47 years old and his goal is to live forever. That's right. He is not wanting to die ever. You can think what you want about that, but one of the primary directives of life is not dying. So I can understand this self-preservation. In fact, that's why we're worried about AI, right? We're worried that they're going to want to just preserve their own, I don't want to call it lives, their own existence. And so self-preservation, he's just taking it to another level. So what does he do? So he does so I'm going to talk about the stuff that he does. That's the easy stuff. So red light therapy and plant-based diet, that is a staple of what he does. And again, you're seeing a lot of this red light therapy. And I agree, this is the baseline. Almost every human being should be doing red light therapy. Again, consult with your own providers or wherever you go before you try any of these things. But red light therapy, the FDA, what's their thing? They call it clinically insignificant risk. It's one of the safest biohacks that we can do, but power and intensity of these beds that you use is really important. So let's talk about some of the two of the really deep things he does. One is stem cell therapy. Now, I am a founder of a stem cell therapy clinic, but we only do more conventional stem cell therapies, things that are allowed by the FDA. And so we take stem cells and we put them into different parts of the body, especially for like knee arthritis, shoulder arthritis, spine, all above board. We take your own stem cells, put them back there. It has amazing results. The literature is growing. I actually have a TED Talk that I'm doing here in Minneapolis on August 13th. For those of you that are interested, it's at Orchestra Hall. I will be talking about everything stem cell therapy, and the future in spine care is incredible, utilizing stem cells. That's for another time. But what does he do? He does whole body stem cell therapy, which means they take tons of stem cells, and then these stem cells are reintroduced into his body, and he's doing it to basically live longer, longevity. Now, the evidence on that is something that, again, has to come out more. We are not doing stem cell therapies for longevity here. At least we're not doing it in our clinics. You can go and get this stuff abroad. I would be very, very careful with doing any of these things. Again, he is a biohacking expert. He spends a lot of money a year trying to reverse his own aging. But yes, he actually is somebody that has done a crazy amount. So in 2024, for example, he went out to into the Bahamas, and he had 300 million bone marrow derived stem cells put into his body. He actually had them put into his knees, his shoulders, his hips, and overall throughout his whole body. Again, this is something that generally is not available here in the United States, but this is what he's doing. It may be the future of what we do, but again, a lot more information and a lot more research is necessary before I can condone any of these things. He does something else called total plasma exchange. Basically, what you do is you remove all the blood, you filter out all of the plasma, so 3 to 5 liters of it, and then you reintroduce it into the body. Essentially, what this does is it pulls out toxins, proteins that are misfolded, things that have inflammatory potential, and then you put albumin and other factors in, and you send it back in the body. Again, these are things that we are not doing, something that I cannot condone as a physician at this time, but something that people are doing to try to extend their life and anti-aging. The bottom line is, a guy that a lot of these other celebrities look to what is the next thing, what's the next great thing. And so Brian Johnson, somebody really, really interesting. I would urge you to look him up and see all the things he's doing. Let's get through some of these other celebrities you're all going to know. Let's kind of zip through them. So Oprah Winfrey, she's a big fan of the Mediterranean diet. As you know, if when we think about Europe and some of these beautiful places in Italy and Spain and Greece, you think Mediterranean diet, people tend, to live long. And again, another health conscious diet, and we can compare it with all the other ones. But yes, I am a big proponent of the Mediterranean diet, not something I do. I'm a big intermittent faster. And I combine that with sometimes with paleo diet, sometimes with just more plant-based diets, sometimes more on the carnivore side. I kind of mix and match. I do it a little bit different, but intermittent fasting is the backbone of what I do. She does daily exercise. Again, they all do that. Mindfulness meditation. She is so into mindfulness. If you really listen to Oprah and some of the things she says, they're really, really profound. And she's had a lot of these thoughts and ideas because of her deep meditation skills and other things she's doing. So again, great strategy. Gwyneth Paltrow, 52 years old, obviously looks incredible, right? Ladies out there, who doesn't want to look like, Gwyneth Paltrow? And by the way, Oprah's 71. She looks pretty good, right? So get Gwyneth Paltrow, 52. She looks like a young woman. So what does she do? Very much clean eating, right? Whole foods. Hyperbaric oxygen therapy. Again, we talked about how incredible oxygen therapy can be to decrease inflammation, stimulate cellular functioning, other things. She wears the wearable tech. She happens to do the Aura ring. In our house, the Whoop watch is the big thing to really monitor and get more, data. We can do an entire show on how to monitor your own, kind of what your body is telling you about where you are. And she's a big red light therapy user. Again, red light therapy, another common theme. So what do we have? Cold therapy, oxygen therapy, red light therapies, all things that we talk about all the time on this show. Madonna, 66 years old. Now, I will say she's gone a little bit. She's not, it's different. She's had definitely an iteration of herself. I don't know. I mean, I'm not like a huge Madonna fan, but this is not the same Madonna from 20, 30 years ago. That being said, you may love her, you may not love her, but one thing, she's keeping herself young. This is a 66-year-old woman. She looks great. Have you seen what she's able to do on the stage on her shows? It's crazy. So she follows something called the macrobiotic diet. Again, another health conscious diet. She does yoga religiously. She is a big fan of peptide therapy. Now, peptides are something I talk about all the time. Now, I mentioned NAD+, that is a peptide, but there's so many other peptides. These are short chain molecules. A peptide you might be more familiar with is something called insulin, right? You know all about insulin. And so these peptides can create incredible changes in the body. And other peptides are some of the GLP-1s, these weight loss drugs that you guys all hear about. But anyway, there are all kinds of ways to deliver peptide. You can do growth hormone releasing peptides. You could do peptides to help you with this, help you with that, help you with brain fog. And you can stack these peptides. The one thing I'll tell you about peptides, you can go and get them, through without going through providers. I strongly don't recommend doing the experimental ones. I recommend going to a clinic, an integrative health clinic, where you have experts that can guide you through the peptide process, but are also experts at understanding how to stack them and how to combine them with other medicines you might be on and other things. And so always, in my opinion, you guys should be doing things under guidance of medical professionals. It's just better. Again, I'm not giving professional advice on this show, but I'm happy to give you professional advice personally, or have you come to our integrative, health clinics and so on and do that. So again, she's doing an anti-inflammatory diet, avoiding gluten. She does the oxygen therapy. She tracks it. And what does she look like? These people are they look great. Then you have, last but not least, I could do another 10, but Sting, he's, believe it or not, he's 73 years old. He looks great. He is a huge yogi. He does tantric yoga. He does a plant-based diet. He is a big intermittent faster. So he combines those two things. I give him, A+ for that routine again, because it's a great combination. He does, again, the 16-8 fasting, like the daily intermittent fasting. I could not be more of a proponent of that. We've talked about fasting before. The benefits are tremendous, but again, consult, a medical professional. This guy looks amazing, right? So again, we've gone through all of these different people and they look great. And so am I one of these people that say, oh my God, you should follow everything these celebrities say? Absolutely not. I'm not a big fan of all these celebrities doing all this political stuff. Yeah, as you guys know, I'm pretty apolitical. And so I think that I think that they should stick in their lane. But you know what? If they're practicing what they preach and they really look incredible, then why not look at some of the things they're doing and saying, is that available to me? Am I making excuses for not, doing it? Am I just being lazy? Do I not care? Do I think that it's fake? But they're doing something, and it's not all plastic surgery. I know some of you guys are thinking, oh, they just get plastic surgery. Oh, they spend, millions of dollars. False. The most of the things, yeah, Brian Johnson's routine is pretty expensive. All of the other ones I mentioned doesn't cost that much to do it. You just have to invest in yourselves. So on the other side of the break, I'll tell you what I do on a weekly basis, and then let me know. And you guys let me know what you think about it. If you want to know more, we'll do further shows on this topic. We'll see you on the other side of the break. We're on AM 950. This is Recharging the Human Battery Radio. All right, everyone. Hopefully you've been able to hang with us. We talked about 11 different A-list celebrities that look incredible, from the Biebs, who's, his early 30s, all the way up to these guys in their 70s, like Sting, who's 73 years old. What do they all have in common? They are all biohackers. I want you guys to just embed that in your mind. What are you doing for biohacking? It's available. Come to, I'm not here to, jump around like just saying, hey, come to our integrative health, go to integrative health clinics. But what we are doing at our hypercharge clinics, I could not be more excited about. So that's what I'm going to talk about. So what we are offering to people is what I am doing personally as far as the biohacking world. So first of all, let's talk about, globally, how I approach things in my life. Have I always been like this? No, but I am 51 years old. I'm very serious about maintaining my health, especially my brain health, my mobility. And yes, would I like to live as long as possible? Absolutely. But I don't just want to live as long as possible. I want to feel as good as possible. And so the routine that I've developed for myself is extremely it's not, I don't want to say easy to do, but for me, it fits in my daily routine. And I'm able to do it almost on all days, not every day, but most days. So what is my general routine? So number one, working out 5 days a week, high intensity interval training, a lot of weight training, maintaining muscle mass. That goes without saying. You guys are pretty familiar with that, but that's a non-starter. There is never a time, unless I'm on vacation, where I don't work out at least 5 days a week. It's a non-starter. As far as dieting, intermittent fasting. So I typically will do a 16-8 intermittent fast. I don't do it all the time, only because it depends on how much I'm doing, more powerlifting and heavier workouts. But for the vast majority of time, I will stay fasted until about 1 to 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and then eat for the rest of the day until the early evening. And that's it. That's my feeding window. All right. That is kind of the basic stuff. Then I try to meditate when I can. I would like to meditate more. I've said it on this show. I'm not great about it, but it's something that definitely makes a big improvement. So I try to do that when I can and try to incorporate some yoga routines. Now, as far as the biohacks that I really talk about all the time. So I do the hypercharge protocol, which is the name of our clinic. I do the oxygen therapy, exercise while under oxygen therapy. I do pulsed electromagnetic frequency therapy, which is basically getting in a magnet, which stimulates good stuff to happen to your cells. I do the red light therapy, which is the staple of the therapy. So I do red light and green light therapy. We've talked about that extensively. That is an absolute, no-brainer to do. And I do something called Nano V structured water therapy, which we offer at all our clinics. Basically, you breathe the structured water, which decreases the inflammation in your body. This is real science. So everything I do is based on hardcore science, and this is what we do offer to our clients in the wellness centers and our patients at the medical center. And then laser therapy for areas of direct inflammation. So class 4 laser therapy is a more intense way to bring that light deeper into the tissues for healing. I am somebody that has been doing NAD therapy for a long time. NAD, again, decreases, especially after age 40. That's made a massive impact. I follow my hormonal health and make sure that that is certainly in line. BPC 157 is a staple for me. It is a peptide that has massive healing properties. Again, this is not medical advice. I'm just telling you what I do. You must consult with your own healthcare professionals if you want to do some of these things. And then there are other things that I do in my overall routine that's a little bit more esoteric, but those are the basics of what I do. So hopefully what you got from today was, you got to become biohackers. You're going to live longer. You're going to live better. You're going to feel better. And people are going to be asking you, what in the world are you doing? How do you look so young and healthy at this age? So we'll talk about this more on a later show. This is Recharging the Human Battery Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Sinacropi, AM 950. We'll see you on the next show.